Welcome to the Pardes channel. Today, we explain Prophet Samuel 2, chapter 17 in a clear and simple way, step by step. This is a genuinely thrilling section of the text. We're talking about high-stakes espionage, intense psychological warfare, and a desperate midnight escape that literally determines the fate of an entire kingdom. It's an incredible story, so let's just dive right in. Okay, just to give you some brief context and set the stage before we begin our step-by-step walkthrough, we are currently right in the middle of a massive national crisis. Absalom has rebelled against his own father, King David. And because of this, David has actually been forced to flee his throne in Jerusalem and is currently out in the dark, harsh wilderness. Now, if you recall from the previous chapter, David was literally weeping and walking barefoot as he fled. He is completely exhausted, he's heartbroken, and he is very much on the run. So the massive overarching question looming over this entire narrative is simply, how will David survive the night? To find out, the text drops us right into the palpable tension of a war council back in Jerusalem. Absalom has just taken the capital city, and he's intentionally surrounded himself with the elders of Israel. Why? To establish and validate his brand new authority. Together, they are holding a council to seek advice on exactly how to completely finish off his father and secure this new throne once and for all. The stakes literally could not be higher here. We immediately witness a brilliant battle of wits between two key advisors. On one side, we have the deadly, incredibly pragmatic military advice of a man named Ahithophel. Now, interestingly enough, in Hebrew, his name translates to brother of folly, which is deeply ironic because historically, his counsel was regarded as so staggeringly accurate that people considered it practically equal to asking the word of God. On the other side, we have the deceptive, ego-stroking advice of David's secret loyalist Hushai. Let's break down exactly what happens in these first few verses. Ahithophel speaks first, laying out his master strategy in verses 1 through 4. He confidently advises Absalom to let him choose 12,000 men to set out tonight, immediately, in pursuit of David. Now, why exactly 12,000? Well, this likely represents 1,000 elite soldiers from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. So he's creating this unified, terrifying national strike force. Ahithophel essentially says, I will attack him while he is weary and weak-handed. His plan is brutal, and it's precise. Cause a massive panic in the dark, let the innocent people flee, strike down only King David, and bring everyone else back to Absalom in peace. It's an undeniably flawless plan, and verse 4 actually tells us, this saying pleased Absalom well, along with all the elders of Israel. But then Absalom calls for Hushai to hear what he has to say. Now Hushai desperately needs to stall in order to save David's life. So he counters Ahithophel's plan by expertly manipulating Absalom's deepest, darkest insecurities. In verses 7 through 10, Hushai boldly states that Ahithophel's advice is not good this time. He starts exploiting Absalom's underlying fear of his father's legendary military prowess. He paints a terrifying picture, describing David and his men as embittered and wildly dangerous, saying they are, quote, as a bear robbed of her whelps in the field. Hushai argues that David is a seasoned expert of war. He's probably hiding in a pit ready to ambush them right now. And Hushai warns that if Absalom's men suffer even a tiny defeat initially, total panic will spread through the ranks, because everyone in Israel already knows David is a fierce fighter. After tearing down the first plan, Hushai lays out his own deceptive strategy in verses 11 through 13, and he brilliantly appeals directly to Absalom's massive ego. He says, don't just send 12,000 men, gather all Israel, from Dan to Beersheba. Now, in Hebrew phrasing, from Dan to Beersheba is a famous idiom. It means from the extreme northern border all the way down to the extreme southern border, literally pulling together the entire nation to form an army as numerous as the sand on the seashore. And the real kicker? He tells Absalom that he needs to lead them personally into battle. He paints this glorious, incredibly cinematic picture of them falling on David's camp like dew on the ground, or bringing ropes to effortlessly drag any fortified city David hides in straight down into the valley. It's totally grandiose, but it secretly does exactly what it's meant to do. It buys David the precious time he needs to escape. And just like that, the trap is set. In verse 14, Absalom makes a truly fatal choice. He and all the men of Israel foolishly agree that Hushai's advice is better than Ahithophel's. You might be wondering, why on earth would they pick the obviously worse military strategy? Well, the text actually pulls back the curtain here to reveal the invisible reality of the plain text.
It simply explains that God was directly answering David's earlier prayer to turn Ahithophel's advice into foolishness. The Lord had ordained to defeat the genuinely good counsel of Ahithophel, specifically to bring ruin upon Absalom. This fateful decision immediately triggers a rapid, incredibly tense spy mission. Let's walk through this timeline from verses 15 to 17. Hushai wastes no time. He goes straight to the loyal priests, Zadok and Abiathar, detailing exactly what both advisors recommended to the new king. But because Hushai doesn't know for absolute sure which plan Absalom will ultimately end up executing, he urgently sends a worst-case scenario warning. He commands the priest to tell David, "Do not lodge this night in the plains of the wilderness, but cross over the river without fail, lest the king be swallowed up." The message is discreetly passed to a maidservant who takes it out to two young spies, Jonathan and Ahimaaz. Now, they are waiting at a place called En-Rogel. In Hebrew, En-Rogel translates to Spring of the Fuller, and it was located right outside the walls of Jerusalem. This means these spies were dangerously close to Absalom's new base of power. And sure enough, in verse 18, the tension totally spikes. A young lad actually spots them and immediately runs to tell Absalom. Knowing they've been compromised, the spies sprint to a house in a nearby town called Bahurim. They find a well in the courtyard and desperately climb down into the pitch dark to hide. This next moment beautifully highlights the incredible bravery of everyday people. A courageous local woman totally saves their lives. Verse 19 tells us she quickly took a covering, spread it right over the well's mouth, and scattered grain over it. Now, drying ground grain on a flat surface in the hot sun was a very, very common household chore in those days. That is exactly why it provided the perfect, unsuspicious camouflage. So when Absalom's pursuing servants arrive and aggressively demand to know where the spies are, she coolly points away and lies, saying, "Oh, they crossed over the brook." The servants search the area, find absolutely nothing, and give up, heading back to Jerusalem. Once the coast is completely clear and the enemy's soldiers are long gone, the spies frantically climb out of that well. Picture them for a second, likely soaking wet, covered in dirt, completely exhausted, sprinting through the treacherous night to deliver Hushai's urgent warning to King David. They finally arrive and command him in verse 21, "Set out and cross the river at once. Ahithophel has advised such and such against you." David instantly heeds the warning. Verse 22 describes his midnight escape to safety. David and all the people with him immediately set out and crossed the Jordan River. Stop and think about the sheer logistical miracle of this event for a moment. Moving an entire camp of exhausted civilians, women, children, and soldiers across a deep flowing river in total darkness, without losing a single person, that is astounding. And the text tells us, by morning light, there lacked not one of his people who had not safely crossed over. David survived the night. Meanwhile, back in Jerusalem, verse 23 reveals Ahithophel's tragic fate. You see, Ahithophel's is a brilliant, incredibly cold calculator. He sees that his flawless advice was rejected, and he immediately knows exactly what this means. Absalom's vanity will inevitably lead to his defeat. The whole rebellion is doomed, and Ahithophel himself will surely be executed for high treason the second David returns to power. So, in a deeply bleak and somewhat anticlimactic end, he saddles his donkey, returns to his home city, sets his household in order, and hangs himself. From a historical perspective, this is actually a highly significant detail, as it is the very first recorded instance of suicide by hanging in the biblical text. Let's move on and look at verses 24 through 26 to clarify the changing geography and the escalating stakes here. David arrives safely at a fortified city called Mahanaim. In Hebrew, Mahanaim translates to two camps. And here, David finally finds a secure refuge to just catch his breath. But in pursuit, Absalom gathers his massive, newly recruited army and crosses the Jordan right after him. Interestingly, the text notes that Absalom appoints Amasa as his new army commander, taking the place of Joab, who had remained staunchly loyal to David. So you can feel the stage being set for a massive, inevitable confrontation. But before any battle actually begins, we witness a profoundly beautiful moment of provision in the desert, detailed in verses 27 through 29. At David's absolute lowest point, three incredibly loyal friends arrive at Mahanaim. What's truly fascinating is who these men are. Shobi is an Ammonite, which means he's actually from a former enemy nation, and Barzillai is an 80-year-old wealthy man from Gilead. This really shows us that David's true allies came from the most surprising of places. And look at what they bring: an abundance of desperately needed, everyday, mundane supplies: bedding, bowls, wheat, barley, flour, roasted grain, beans, lentils, honey, curds, sheep, and cheese. The scripture tells us exactly why they brought all of this. They simply said, "The people have become hungry and tired and thirsty in the desert."
This brilliantly illustrates the simple, raw humanity of the moment. These loyal friends recognize the profound vulnerability of the king of Israel and his exhausted camp. They didn't arrive offering complex military strategy or grand sweeping speeches. They brought beds, blankets, and hot food to people who were shivering and starving out in the wilderness. It's an incredibly touching scene.
Looking at these simple ideas from this entire chapter, we can actually draw some highly practical life lessons. Think about your own life for a second. Number 1, beware of ego. Are you letting flattery blind you to hard truths, just like Absalom did when he chose Hushai's grandiose, ego-stroking plan over Ahithophel's genuinely solid advice? Ego is a dangerous trap. Number 2, value loyal friends. Are you cherishing the people like Shobi and Barzillai who show up during your absolutely hardest times, bringing exactly what you need when you have absolutely nothing to offer them in return? And number 3, courage matters. Small acts of everyday bravery, like a woman simply spreading some grain over a well to hide spies, can literally change the course of history.
All right, to recap, we've walked step by step through this thrilling, high-stakes chapter. We started in Absalom's incredibly tense war council in Jerusalem. We witnessed Hushai's brilliant psychological deception to buy David precious time. We followed the heart-pounding spy mission and that super close call at the well in Bahurim. We marveled at David's miraculous midnight escape across the Jordan River. We noted the tragic and historic end of Ahithophel. And finally, we watched David find some desperately needed relief and provision from a few surprising allies at Mahanaim. Which leaves us with one massive, ultimate, provocative question. What happens when these two huge armies finally meet in battle? Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.